Hare Krishna, good evening.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandava Sparnam. How are
My
you?
obeisances to you, close to Prabhupada.
Jai.
Good to see you.
Narayan Keshav, yes. Nice to see you too, Prabhu. Uh, Hopefully, we are expecting a few more people. I think they're enjoying the sun too much. I think this week's been very nice. But anyway, I think we can definitely make a start. Let me just introduce you first of all. I think I did put the introduction in the group, but just to let everybody know that our guest today is Grace Pradyumna Prabhu from Iskcon Leicester. He's the president there, and he has dedicated his life to Iskcon and Srila Prabhupada's mission. From a young age, he was involved in Iskcon Birmingham, I understand, and then went to the manor for about 10 years under the guidance of Shruti Dharma and Pran Bandhu Prabhu. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. And then you ended up in Leicester somehow around 2004. And
Yeah, 20 years ago. A long time.
yeah, you had a great journey, Prabhu. And we can learn so much from you. And you sort of took out your work and family life, spirituality, all, great example to all of us. And obviously, you mentioned that two Vanti schools manifested, and you are teaching. Are you still teaching in Avanti School right now?
Yeah, I teach 2 days a week there.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, okay, Prabhuji, I'm going to pass on to yourself, and maybe you can make some kind of start, and then we'll take it from there. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Narayan Kesha Prabhu, and thank you so much for um, being involved in educating devotees on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It's really inspiring that you take this service on and encourage devotees to read systematically, study systematically, and become absorbed and nurtured by this very beautiful text. And I'm sure everybody who's attending your class is receiving such joy and fulfillment in just diving into these transcendental words. So I'll begin with some prayers, and then what I'd like to do is just for us to read all the verses, and then I'll come back and we'll break it up. We'll break up the sequence of the verses. I'll just say a few things about the sequence of the verses in this chapter, and then just open up for conversation and discussion. See what other reflections devotees may have, whatever questions that you may have. I'm not going to go dive deeply into Srila Prabhupada's purport, but just kind of talk more about the general overview and the sequence of verses that we read in this chapter called the appearance of Narada. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Shayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaha Padantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shrirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvang Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Guruda Sujayadvaita Shamini Namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastarade. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 1, Chapter 4, The Appearance of Narad. Vyasadeva said, on hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis, engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Shaunaka said, O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate this pious message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadeva Goswami. In what period and at what place was this first begun, and why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? His, Vyasadev's, son was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them, made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. How was he, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jhangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? He, Sukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? He was such a great emperor that all his enemies who would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter for others? We know that you are an expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasa was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose took his morning ablation in the waters of the Saraswati, and sat alone to concentrate. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through this transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4, in order to expand them among men. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini became the professor of the Samaveda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. The Samantu Muni, Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Ramaharshana, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great-grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Thus the great sage Vyasa Dev, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. O twice-born Brahmanas! Still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. So reading that in itself is just quite illuminating. And one thing we see in the sequence of these verses, we almost see the sequence of speakers of the Bhagavatam. And we immediately hear that Sutta Goswami is being glorified by Shonaka Rishi. He's referred to as the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Now this is very interesting because this almost gives insight to there's an agreed qualification from all the sages present. Amongst all the sages with Sutta Goswami, Shonaka stands and represents them all to ask questions. We hear that certainly in the first chapter and subsequent chapters. But this idea of being recognized by other sages, rishis, devotees is quite potent. We see the same when Parikshit is sitting on the banks of the Ganges. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of sages who gather to see this king who has given up everything, whose very self is the shelter of everyone. He's now given that all up because he has this curse, and all the sages are gathered around him. And he's ready to ask questions. What should I do? Who is it that I should ask these questions to? But the sages don't come forward until Sukadev Goswami arrives, and he is given the esteemed seat. So within these behaviors of two gatherings of sages, we get an insight into, who are we qualified to speak on Bhagavatam? It is by Srila Prabhupada's grace upon us, who has given us this transcendental cream of all literature, that we can read it. We're invited to speak on it, but our speaking is, superficial. Our speaking is, limited in realization. When we compare it to, who's actually being invited to speak on it, when people like Shonaka say to Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and you are respected, because you can speak and recite this. So the caliber, the quality, the characteristics of the speaker, we see this sequence. Sutta Goswami is going to reveal that Vyasadeva spoke it to his son, and his son spoke it to Parikshit Maharaj. So we kind of see this sequence. And then at the end of the chapter, Narada Muni arrives, and Narada Muni is going to give instruction for Vyasadeva to recite this. So Vyasadeva is going to hear from Narada Muni, and of course Narada Muni is the son of Brahma, and Brahma has heard from Krishna, and entered into meditation for a long period of time to reach his maturity and to reach his realization, in which he gives the essence, Krishna gives the essence of the Bhagavatam to Brahma, in order for him to enter into that realization. And then after that realization, Brahma's sharing it with Narada, Narada sharing it with Vyas to Sukadev Goswami, and so on. And at the beginning of this age of Kali, the sages are now inviting Sutta Goswami. You were there in that assembly. You are qualified. You are fortunate. You are of saintly qualities. You heard very attentively. So now you give this to us. And so we begin to get a glimpse that actually the qualification for reciting and speaking on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is quite high. And so therefore we always precede our own sharing of limited realization and our learning. We precede that by drawing on the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, by drawing on the blessings of the Vaishnavas. So whatever glimpse, whatever we may have learned, we can share that as purely as possible about the Bhagavatam. We begin to then hear, after Sutta Goswami has been venerated by Shonaka Rishi, we hear about the characteristics of Sukadev Goswami. In fact, in this chapter, we almost get a summary study of Sukadev Goswami's character, and we get a summary study of Parikshit Maharaj's character. And we hear about that from text 4 to 6. His Vyasadev's son was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist, whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. I find that quite revealing. We are all exposed. Exposed to what? We are all exposed to the conditioning of the modes of nature. And so therefore we appear, we appear in so many different possibilities of life's experiences. We develop a certain ego, or certain false identity in connection with the modes of nature. Sometimes, most times we bring those modes of nature into the practice of bhakti. And, we expose that in our own dealings, behaviors, language, and so on. And we begin to realize that there's work to be done on us. But somebody who's unexposed, not touched, tinged by the modes of nature, you may look at that person and he may just appear so ignorant, but because that person, like Sukadeva Goswami, when he's walking through the town, he's in trance. He's in this deep concentration. He's in trance. He's not exposed to the external manifestations of the modes of nature. He's not influenced by them. And so it says, while Vyas was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Shri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. Now this challenged Vyasadeva. Why is it that you covered yourself when I came, but I noticed from ahead that when my son just came by and I'm following my son, but you didn't do that? And the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female. And so that's another standard of the speaker of the Bhagavatam, to have this spiritual vision. Pasyati, in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna uses this beautiful word, pasyati sapasyati, to see with spiritual vision. In chapter 18, text 20, Krishna says, what is knowledge in the mode of goodness? Knowledge in the mode of goodness, he says, is when one can see the true spiritual nature of all beings. And when one can become absorbed in that, not just philosophically, not just theoretically, but Sukadeva Goswami is absorbed in this. Not a male, not a female, they just see the true spiritual nature of all beings. And so therefore not attracted or distracted by female, male, doesn't really matter. Beauty, not beauty, it doesn't really matter. But Krishna says in the same sequence of verses in chapter 18, these are worthy of our study, especially in today's world climate, where there's a lot of division. Knowledge in the mode of goodness, you see the true spiritual nature. Knowledge in the mode of passion, you see the division of people. You may see that you may even accept that everybody has a soul, but you divide them. These are my people, these are your people. Like Dhritarashtra at the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita, Mamaka, Pandava. These are mine, these are my children, these are my boys. What did they do? Pandava, Jeva. What did the sons of my brother do? So divide them. So mode of passion means to divide a sense of identity. These are Hindus, these are Muslims, these are Christian, these are black, these are white. And in this context, these are male and these are female. Sukadeva Goswami didn't have a tinge of that. And then, just to finish off this point, 1822, knowledge in the mode of ignorance is when one may have a particular idea and think that that's everything. And that's extremism. When people hold on to extreme ideas, extreme ideologies, and make movements out of them and create havoc with them in society, even harm and hurt others based on their ideology. That's knowledge in the mode of ignorance. What I have is everything. There's nothing more than this. This is the right way. Everything else is junk. Mode of passion, everything is divided. These are my people, these are your people, we hate them, we love them, and so on. But mode of good, I see true spiritual nature. So as devotees of Krishna, as students of Bhagavad-Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, our priority is to cultivate this deep spiritual vision, this knowledge of the mode of goodness, to see this spiritual nature of all beings, what to speak of human beings and sections of humanity and so on. And only from that point of view can we offer real change and transcendental direction, spiritual guidance to people in society. So how was he, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyas, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jahangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? So of course, I mean, these are derogatory words: madman, dumb, retard. I mean, if you call someone a retard today at work, you'd get a disciplinary. And of course, we're not calling, Sukadeva Goswami these words. It appears that his behavior is like this because he's in an inward trance. He's not concerned of the external arrangements and movements governed by the modes of nature. So the sage Shaunaka is asking, tell us about this great personality. So we hear this summary study of the characteristics of Sukadeva Goswami. And Sukadeva Goswami is positioned in relative to Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj is relative to Sukadeva Goswami. As we know, when we study the 9 processes of devotional service, and then we look at each personality that perfected each of their respective practices. So in studying the characteristic and nature of these 2 personalities, Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, we're actually studying the characteristic of what it takes to perfect Shravanam and what it takes to perfect Kirtanam. The attention, mindfulness, depth of question, the fasting, everything that, however, the detachment, that really portrays the quality of Shravanam. Just how do I hear? How do I hear with rapt attention? And, as we've just heard about Parikshit Maharaj's deep spiritual vision, spiritual equality, seeing true spiritual nature of all, not being drawn into the temporary fluctuations of male and female, creates the right qualification for the kirtana, for the glorification of Krishna. Who Krishna is above the modes, the speaker becomes above the modes, and therefore can raise the hearer above the modes of material nature and bring them to the place of transcendental glory. So these verses from 7 through to 12, we hear this beautiful summary study of Parikshit Maharaj's qualification, and we'll just remind ourselves of those. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for the great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? He, Sukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. And then Parikshit Maharaj comes. It is said that Parikshit Maharaj is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. What's very interesting here is, if we look at this following verses, they're already glorifying the qualities, activities, behavior of Parikshit Maharaj. They already know about him because they say he was a great emperor and possessed all opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast till death? So they know who he is. They know he's the prestige of the Pandu dynasty, the grandson of Arjuna. They know that. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, and including his life? Those who are devoted to the court, this is a really nice verse about Parikshit Maharaj. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality live only for the welfare, development, and happiness. Now, as devotees, if we were to think about how we want to live as missionaries, we live for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though Emperor Parikshit was free of all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter of others? So they know this. But what did they say? Please tell us about him. Another thing that stood out for me when I was just reading this a couple of times through is, how do you glorify someone? Sometimes, not sometimes, but we glorify devotees on their birthday. We glorify devotees when we see them, when we meet them. But we learn here the art of glorification, the art of appreciation of devotees. And even though he's already appreciating the glories of Parikshit Maharaj, he begins by saying, please tell us about him. And that's because in relation to Krishna and Krishna's katha and Krishna's incarnations and Krishna's relationships with his various devotees, Parikshit Maharaj was hearing all of this. And he was being transformed through all of this right across the 7 days. And the sages are eager to hear. What did Parikshit hear? So please tell us about him. Yeah, we know who he is, but please tell us. How do we know who he is? Here's my glorification. Here's my glorification of him. So we see how the glorification of Parikshit, and what we can learn is how the glorification of a Vaishnav, or the glorification of any person, is specific. He was full of youth. He had strength. He possessed kingly opulences. And just as we hear these specific characteristics, it tells us that Shaunaka and the sages, Nirmatsaranam Satam, they are above envy in order to glorify Parikshit like this. He possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to, why did he give them up? So with each layer of glorification, we get the idea that of purity. This is the essence here is really to learn the connection to Krishna, the connection to the Bhagavatam, through this personality of Parikshit Maharaj. And then we hear this. We know that you're, again, a glorification of Sutta Goswami. We know that you are an expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas. And you can clearly explain the answers to all questions we have just put to you. Now, if you take that as a qualification for the speaker of the Bhagavatam, how many of us could really put our hands up to, yep, I can answer every question. Though we have faith that every question can be answered by Bhagavad-Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, I may not have the realization or the knowledge to do that for anyone. But by regular attention and study of these scriptures, we become familiar with them. Prabhupada said, read Bhagavad-Gita like the Christians read the Bible. What did he mean by that? Read it so it's, it inside out, back to front. You know exactly where the verses are that explain the common challenges of people in the world. And therefore we can use that as our main guidebook for serving people in the world and the various challenges. And we come to the Bhagavatam to be nurtured in our Krishna consciousness by being absorbed in these, what we're about to hear, in all the appearances of the Lord, all the intimate and very sweet dealings he has with the variety of devotees in each of those appearances. So we know that you are expert. So again, this is our aspiration. Not that we want to become expert and to be known for our expertise and to be glorified. No, we want to know the subject matter because it creates spiritual transformation for us. And as part of our service, we can guide people through that wisdom. So from text 14, Sutta Goswami begins to speak, and he begins to answer Shaunaka Rishi's earlier questions. In what period, at what place did this verse begin, and why was it taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, the great sage, get this inspiration to compile this literature? So Sutta Goswami begins. He says, when the second millennium overlapped with the third, the great sage was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Once upon a time, Vyasadeva, as he rose, he took up this morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. He saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium that happened on earth in different ages. And this is when he said, right, the world needs, spiritual wisdom. People will need to learn how to structure their societies, how to structure their lives, how to structure the divisions of work, how to make progress through yajna. And he divided that Vedas into four. And then what we hear for a sequence of verses, and these verses all the way through to 20, all the way through to 27, no, just before that, 25. These are good verses for us where if we want to learn about the structure of the Vedas. If we want to, Prabhupada uses the phrase professors, those who are learned, those who are deputized to study and promote the particular thought process and knowledge of that Veda. So in these verses, we learn, I'm not going to read them through again right now, but we learn about the rishis who are given the responsibility to be the professor or to be the custodian of that particular aspect of knowledge, to spread it. In 23, we hear about disciplic succession, disciples, grand disciples, great grand disciples, and all these branches, come into being. So, what again? The glorification of Vyasadeva given by Sutta Goswami is he's a great sage, and he's very kind to the ignorant masses. And he edited the Vedas so that it might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Now, this word assimilated is powerful. When we educate, we want people to assimilate. We give a Bhagavad-Gita class. Please assimilate these verses. We read Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Please assimilate, imbibe, take this inward. Again, we hear, out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends. So he thought of everybody. He thought of, those who would not get the deep philosophical ideas of life. And he thought of all the other kind of people in Varnas that would take advantage of this spiritual wisdom, philosophy, social, practical insights given in the Bhagavatam. But this first line of 25 is quite striking. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that it would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Now that just reminds me of Srila Prabhupada getting up in the early hours, 1 a.m., sitting at his desk, clicking his dictaphone, translating these passages, translating the beautiful narrations and verses and songs and prayers of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Why? Out of compassion. Srila Prabhupada thought it wise that it would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. So that's, we can think about and remember Srila Prabhupada from this particular verse. But this whole explanation of the Vedas brings us to understanding, yes, this is everything he did, but what was he feeling and why? O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied. Although he engaged himself in working for total welfare of all people. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, now this is Vyasadeva speaking, I have under strict vows, disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas and the spiritual masters and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rules, and I have now shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of twice-born, can see the path of religion. But here's his regret, his deep contemplation. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. So he's expressing his feeling. And again, I was almost thinking how Arjuna expresses his emotions at the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita. And then he says, Karpanya dosha, Krishna, I've lost composure. I'm feeling miserly weakness. I don't know what I should do. I'm a soul surrender. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapanam. Please instruct me. What should I do? Now, Arjuna in that situation is trying to, find relief from his mental anxiety. And Krishna, just tell me, what do you want me to do? And he wants Krishna to remove that, anxiety of confusion of what he should do now, his lamentation of what might happen, his fear of the future. Krishna, just remove this. Just tell me what I should do. So the similarity between Arjuna and Vyasadeva here is honesty. This honest reflection, honest introspection. I am feeling incomplete. Though I know what I should do. I know what I have done. I know I'm kind of missing the point about devotional service. So one might say, well, okay, you're feeling incomplete. You know why. Well, why don't you just do it then? But as he's feeling this, what's very significant is his spiritual master Narada Muni arrives. Because now there's going to be a test. Why have you done this? Why have you given people bridges to cross that don't really take them anywhere? Why did you just provide these branches of the Vedas? No wonder you're feeling despondent. No wonder you're feeling incomplete. You didn't give them Krishna. Now give them Krishna. And so then we will pick that up in the beautiful chapter 5, the conversation between them. But the final lesson we learn in this chapter is on the arrival of his spiritual master, Vyasadeva, the great sage, the compiler of the Vedanta. He gets up. He's a big sage, but his guru walks in, he gets up and respectfully and worships him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, who is the head of the our sampradaya. So, though he's the guru, all the celebrations of the guru's birthdays are named after him. But still, he gets up for his guru. showing, the right example. Doesn't matter how learned, how scholarly, how advanced, how big one may be, everybody has a superior. And in the presence of that superior, everybody is humble, everybody offers respects to that superior, everybody worships that superior, everybody, glorifies that superior with veneration. Doesn't matter who, what, where, title, no title, whatever that might be. So Vyasadeva sets a beautiful example here in the way he greets and receives his spiritual master, Narada Muni. So I went without giving anyone opportunity to ask anything as we were going along. But let me just stop here and see what other reflections you may have, any questions that you may have. I hope that format and breakdown was useful for everybody here, and I hope it kept your attention in diving deeper into the glory of this fourth chapter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi. That's wonderful. Thank you for the thorough analysis of chapter 4. That's beautiful. Because when we're going through it, there's many insights and many things that we overlook. We just like whiz through them. But thank you for stopping at each important point and pointing it out for us. So it just gives you a bit more depth to the chapter for us. So really appreciate that. I mean, I have got many questions, but I'm going to ask everybody else. You have any questions? Please do ask. You can put your hand up, or you can unmute. Please ask questions, whatever has come to your mind. Please, you can ask Prabhu. Otherwise, I will start asking. So, Jai Prabhu, Kiran Prabhu, Manikaksh Prabhu, Puri Mataji, whoever needs to ask a question, please ask. So Jai Prabhu is written his question. Is there not a danger that if you over glorify someone that you might inflate the ego?
That's not for you to worry about.
And second part of the question is a pure
If I just add something, our duty is to glorify, and the person who's being glorified, their duty is to remain humble and to pass on that glorification to their spiritual superiors. When somebody glorifies us, we realize if I've done something useful, it's because somebody has blessed me to do that. And so therefore, if they're glorifying me, that glory really belongs to them. If somebody is enjoying that glorification, then it will become false ego, and that can become dangerous. And that's why we have good association. Good association means we don't just hang out with people who say good things about us. Good association means we hang out with people who will tell us that, we have a false ego also. So that's real friendship and good association. Is a pure devotee not modest and would not want such a glory? Yeah, well, there you go. You've answered that question. Yeah, a pure devotee doesn't, a pure devotee has to pass on. This is because, of my guru or other devotees. I once took out my Guru Maharaj to visit people in homes when I was at the manor as a brahmachari. Instead of a program, we visited a few people one evening, just some devotees. And every place I was just, a young devotee, mid-20s, and took Maharaj to these homes. And quite naturally, everyone said something nice about me, And then on the way back, as driving him back to the manor, Jayadvaita Maharaj looked at me and he said, all those nice words that people said about you? Make sure you pass them upwards. Make sure you pass them upwards. Not that we hold on to and become clouded by that. Devotees should always feel, I am not the final product. I am work in progress. There's a lot more I need to do to improve. And if somebody says something nice about me, I take the encouragement, but I thank my seniors. I hope that's okay.
And they
Okay, thank you,
say
answer.
it takes. Sorry, Prabhu, you want to say something?
Yes, just thank you for the answer.
You're welcome, Jay. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just going to say that they say it takes the community to bring up a child and like that. So, Prabhupada say take gallons of blood to make a devotee. So somebody has spent a lot of time and energy. If we are in a position to be glorified, somebody has spent a lot of time and energy to bring us to that level. So yeah, so, there's somebody above us who has helped us to get where we are. So you definitely, I think, we should definitely remember that. Not that I've done it by myself, because we haven't. Somebody has helped us to get there. Thank you, Jai Prabhu. Anybody else? Any questions, please? Okay. Oh, I was going to ask. In Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna says, like we've seen now that Vyasadeva, he's despondent because he's written the Vedas, but yet he's despondent that something's missing. And then he writes the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But then why does Krishna say in Bhagavad-Gita that by the Vedas I am to be known? Why didn't he say by Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam I am to be known?
Well, that's a good question. Because if you look at the overall arrangement of the Vedas, which includes the Puranas as the fifth Veda, the Puranas, there are 18 Puranas divided into the modes of nature, and the Bhagavatam is the cream of all Puranas. And it's not that there isn't Krishna in the Vedas also. Krishna appears in different Vedas, glorifications, references to Krishna, whether it's worship or whether it's his supremacy or whether it's about creation or whether it's something, Krishna's there. But the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam gives that full nurturing experience and connection and glorification of Krishna that really brings us, as Prabhupada says, we can see Krishna on every page of the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is a part of the overall Vedas. In fact, it's the cream. So he is to be known by these scriptures, which means he is the conclusion. He is what who we're really searching for is Krishna. And of all scripture, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is, you can't hide. Krishna doesn't hide in the Bhagavatam. Krishna is all the way through every canto, whether it's by prayer, whether it's a narration, whether it's, historical, whether it's, whatever it may be, Krishna is visible, accessible, available to everyone based on that.
Sure.
On every page.
Sure.
So it does include, Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. It does include the Bhagavatam, but the Bhagavatam is further glorified as the essence or the cream of all of those teachings.
So, right, I understand. So you can't take a Bhagavatam away from the Vedas. It's part, supplement, or the essence, in this case, of the Vedas. So
it's the ultimate glory of the Vedas.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, it's the ultimate glory.
Yeah. The other thing that while reading this, it's getting that is towards the end, it says that after he's written the Vedas, a huge number of books, and then the super soul is telling him in the heart that something's missing. The super soul is telling him that he has to do more. But why? My thinking, why didn't the super soul tell him it earlier? After he's written like thousands of books, and then he's getting this. Why didn't he get the despondency earlier? So he wouldn't have spent so much time. Or was the Vedas meant to come anyway? They were supposed to.
Well, you see, the Vedas are they offer many fields of knowledge for human society. And human society can be ideally structured by the Vedas. It's not that the Vedas in themselves are incomplete for serving human society. They're very much complete. Complete health, complete health inside, complete about education, complete about how to work and live in this world, how to perform sacrifice, how to worship the Supreme. The Vedas give you all of that complete wisdom to live a progressive and fulfilled human life. The point is, excuse me, he's feeling incomplete because he's given something just to set up human society to be progressive, religious, dharmic, for sure, and to be progressive through those means. Progressive through dharma, progressive through artha, progressive through kama, progressive through moksha. No problem. That human life should be progressive. The Vedas are progressive for human life. But he's feeling dissatisfied because what does he really want to do? He wants to glorify Krishna. And so the next conversation that we'll hear is actually very useful, even from understanding the different levels in which we go through when presenting Krishna consciousness. And Narada Muni will unpack those different layers of knowledge and how we present things to people and what we might say, what we might not say. Well, I don't want to tell someone about Krishna today because they're only here for the first time. We don't want to blow them out and mention that we're Hare Krishnas. We don't want to chant Hare Krishna today. Let's just chant Om instead. Or let's not tell them that Krishna is God because it might just freak them out and they don't want to do anything religious. In chapter 5, Narada Muni actually advises against that kind of approach. Because by bringing Krishna to a person, you accelerate their spiritual transformation. Now, we can always talk about how we do it, how we package it, how we present it, and in a way that's welcoming, inviting, and so on. But a lot of it also has to do with the quality of the individuals, the sincerity, purity, and all of those things, in order for the message that we're sharing to have impact. So Vyasadeva wants to glorify. And from another point of view, you could look at it that you could do so much for the world. You can make so many arrangements for the world. But you have to kind of become absorbed yourself. Like even for us in devotional service, there's a festival, there's a temple, there's fundraising, there's so many organizational management things we can get so busy with. And sometimes we kind of feel tired. Oh, I've done so much, where's the taste for me? And sometimes we make the wrong sacrifice. We give up, I only have a certain amount of time. I've got to get a lot of this service done. But if we do it parallel to filling our hearts with Krishna through hearing, then that service becomes less of a burdensome feeling because we feel complete, or a little bit more complete, or we feel immersed, we feel nurtured. So after a festival day, when we've had a tough, few days doing something, got our rounds done barely, but we didn't really have, a solid program for hearing. After all that's gone, when we come back to regularity and we get back into the routine of reading and hearing and so on, we know what that feeling is like. It uplifts us again. So that's the way we can understand this incompleteness in Vya. He was busy, he was serving so many. But he needed to go back into his own space of finding Krishna and glorifying him. And then Narada Muni gives him the blessings for this task so that he can be fully satisfied.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Ajay, Gaura, would you like to ask a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class.
Hey, Ajay.
Yeah, Prabhu, I think from listening to your class, I'm trying to, the thought that came to my mind was trying to gauge just how advanced Shukadeva Goswami is, in that he who was asked to speak on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, not Vyasadeva, who we know is a great sage, not even Narad Muni, has done so much with so many great personalities, great devotees. And even this encounter with the damsels, which normally might be a bit awkward, but actually there was a great realization from the damsels. I mean, that Shukadeva Goswami is so advanced, that so pure, that he sees everybody as a spirit soul, something that we're supposed to see everybody, as spirit soul, but that doesn't always happen as such. But he actually sees them in the what the actual form is. And yeah, so I thought it was amazing. Thought this how great personality is Shukadeva Goswami, that that it have so much impact. That on the one hand, you got people who though that don't recognize his greatness, they might think he's a madman. But then again, all these great sages, Parikshit Maharaj, they recognize him to be such an elevated personality.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very difficult for us to fathom how the depth of his advancement. An indication is given that he did not differentiate between male and female. Now that's a big indication. In the chapter 6 of Bhagavad-Gita, there's further indication. One who sees equally, honest well-wishers, mediators, one who sees pebbles and gold, one who sees people who honor you or people who dishonor you. It doesn't really matter. That's the equanimity of mind that Krishna is talking about in Bhagavad-Gita. And that's the equanimity of mind and samadhi that we see in the example of Sukadeva Goswami. It's superhuman, almost. Please don't try this in your town. Walk naked through the marketplace. You'll get arrested. You might want to test out your advancement, but I think they'll throw you in prison. So I think that's an indication. The indication is how far are we removed from the bodily concept of life.
Sure, probably. Yeah, it's obviously,
And that's work in progress.
definitely can't follow in the footsteps completely.
But that's why we constantly hear, we constantly practice, and that's why we glorify these personalities. And Shaunaka Rishi is setting the example, Sutta Goswami is setting the example, Vyasadeva is setting the example of glorifying these personalities who have these qualities. And by hearing about these qualities, and that's what Bhagavatam is. Bhagavatam, you hear about the glories of the devotees and their devotional qualification, their devotional characteristics, and you hear about the glories of Krishna. By hearing about the glories of the devotees, we become inspired to follow those footsteps. And by hearing about the glories of Krishna, we become nurtured to surrender unto this great supreme personality. We may not match them, but we can serve them. Thank you for your question. Good question.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Any last questions before we finish? Because I mean, we could go on for another hour, but I think we want to finish 1 or 5 minutes, so we want to finish near time as possible. But if there is any questions, please ask. Otherwise, we can thank Prabhu and leave it here. Yeah, I've got a lot of questions coming, but I'm going to leave it. I can always ask you on Saturday, Sunday when we meet, Prabhu.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for offering this service to devotees, for being nurtured in Bhagavatam. May it long continue, and may everybody relish this amazing text and amazing opportunity to have Sangha and the shelter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
And we need seniors like you for guidance to help us, give us the proper insight into what we are studying. So thank you so much for making the time.
Sorry, Prabhuji, can I ask one final question?
Sure, Prabhu, sure.
Before you close. It's very nice summary, Prabhuji. We didn't get to hear all of it because we unfortunately joined late. But the question I have in my mind is, if Vyasadeva wrote all the Vedas, why did he ask his disciples to expand the Vedas when he distributed them amongst them?
That's the process.
Okay.
That's the process. At the beginning of chapter 4, Evam parampara praptam imam rajo shoyo ridu. Krishna says, first the son received this knowledge from me, then the son gave it to his son, Ikshvaku gave it to Manu. But that chain is broken. So now I'm telling you, Arjuna, to regain, to reconnect that chain of spiritual teachers. So this is the, this is the process of disseminating spiritual wisdom. The teacher instructs the student becomes qualified, becomes the teacher, then instructs student, and this is the way we pass on. Evam parampara praptam.
I understand that process, but what I read was that he asked them to expand the Vedas, not just propagate what he had written, to maintain and expand them. I add further detail.
Again, to give presentations of that according to time, place, and circumstance. If you think about every time let's say every time we give a class, that class is limited to my realization. I'm speaking in a limited way on a subject matter that is unlimited. And I'm speaking to an audience. What I'm doing is I'm expanding, I'm passing on my realization to an audience, and they may learn something, they may take it and pass it on. And so everyone's realization of Krishna's words is unique to them, and they're passing that on, and that is kind of like expanding it. If you look at Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asked the Goswamis, study, research, and write. He could have just said, yeah, just go back to the Vedas and reprint them. But no, the Goswamis were writing their own books. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, they were writing that. The Sandarbhas by Jiva Goswami. They were expanding this. Read the Bhagavatam. Now give a overview of how to understand the Bhagavatam. So Jiva Goswami does that. So it's a tradition. It's a tradition. Srila Prabhupada's purports expands on what's already there. Prabhupada could have just given us the translation and printed the books, but he's expanding that by giving a glimpse in a way that allows us to live it, us to apply it, for us to learn it. So it's the tradition. It's the literary tradition of our sampradaya that the guru teaches to the student becomes qualified, becomes the teacher, expands, preserves, and passes on that wisdom to others.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhupada.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that this is why a lot of people misunderstand when Srila Prabhupada says that everything is in my books. So people misunderstand that. They're thinking that we should not read any other book because Srila Prabhupada says everything is in my books. But that is not the case. I think Prabhupada explained as well that I didn't say don't read anything else because everything is in my books. That you're welcome to read, and he would have done a lot more. Prabhupada would have done a lot more if he was still here. But unfortunate that he left this world at that time. But he would have carried on, and we have sannyasis writing. They're still writing many books, and like you said, that it's a parampara. So it's passed on, and time, place, and circumstance, new books are written. So yeah, definitely, you pass it on to your disciples, and they pass it on to their disciples, and they write new things according to the time and place. So yeah, makes sense. So this people misunderstand sometimes. Prabhupada says, don't read anything else, just read my books. But you can read supplements. It's not a problem. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. And I look forward to your association.
I look forward to yours. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your association today. And we look forward again to having you. I hope you'll make time like you have today for us, and in the future as well. And we'll learn when we can learn for your guidance, really.
Well, I'm just learning with you. So thank you so much. I look forward to coming along again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Let's give Prabhuji 3 Haribos, please.
Hare
Haribol.
Hare Bol. Hare Bol.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
All the best for this weekend. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.